welcome to Yates Makes. I'm back with another video on jelly plate printing, this time looking at the full kind of surface area of my large 16 by 20 inch gel plate to produce these big kind of bold, impactful prints. So as well as looking at how we can scale up a little drawing from our sketchbooks into this bigger format, we're going to be looking at stenciling techniques, as well as how to build some textures, colours and some interest kind of shifting across your print. Okay, stay tuned, let's have a look how I got on. Okay, here I am set up with my Indian ink and a kind of sharpened chopstick. It's quite a soft wood, so it's fairly absorbent, soaks up some of that ink and allows for a bit of flow. And the plant I'm drawing, I've just inserted a photo there of because I've got it set up right in front of me when I'm drawing. It's called Honesty. You get these beautiful dry seed heads, one of the few things that looks good in the garden over the winter. So I'm going to cover, actually, when I do a little sketchbook update video, I've been really enjoying going back to sticking ink and just using ink generally. But yeah, this one started with a fairly loose free line sketch of these beautiful seed heads, and got me thinking, what can I do to scale this up and try and keep some of that quite loose and kind of varied quality of line. What I thought would be nice to try is a large scale oil pastel drawing, nice and loose and expressive. So I scanned and cropped my little ink drawing and just chose a small section of it, and that's what I've printed out and then photocopied up to A3. Now what you see me doing here is with, it's hard to see, I know, a purple oil pastel, I'm going over my photocopied lines, and obviously the oil pastel is what is going to act as a resist in transfer. I made a second photocopy as well, and this one I'm cutting out those seed head shapes and I'm going to use this as a stencil. Now I think this technique could work with all sorts of line drawing, you know, whether it's an architectural, could even work with a portrait. So I'm going to try some more stuff, but this was a good one to start with. And there you go, you can see my two copies all ready to go, transfer copy and stencil. So I've got my large gel plate, my 16 by 20 inch, but I'm not going to be using all of it. I'm just working to A3 at the moment. So with my transfer, obviously you've a little bit of pressure here because you're trying to cover quite a large surface area and you do not want that paint to dry too much. But you do need to get a kind of even and thin coverage too, so you're going to have to work at the surface a little just to try and spread that out. So don't hang around is the message here. Try and be really confident, work quick, even spread, and don't let it dry too much. So on my transfer copy goes, the one that I've put some oil pastel over, and I'm just kind of fingertip pressure here. Again, this doesn't need to be down for too long, and you know, just working at the little creases. I've tried to angle the light a little there so you can see the relief and where it's sticking up a bit and where I've had to work at it, and then peel up from one corner. And this one didn't transfer too bad. I mean, the main line work is all there, but it did need a fair bit of tidying up, and that tidying up you'll see me do in a second. I just did with a little bit of masking tape. You can see my transfer copy there. It would be good for another few transfers. So yeah, as I said before, just tidying up with a bit of tape. You could equally use a baby wipe and a bit of baby lotion, probably be a little bit quicker as well. Okay, I've not tried working like this before, so I'm a bit skeptical. I just think if I put a stencil on here and start messing around, it's going to pull off some of that black outlining, but we'll see. Right, so I've laid my stencil over, and first thing I'm going to do is, I haven't got much of this left, but I'm going to see if it works, just to have some faint text on parts, see if I can get any transfer from these old newspapers. So I don't want much here, it's just going to be very subtle. Just add me a little bit of tone here and there. Kind of vary the direction a bit. I'm not sure if this is paper that I've already used as well, which means although it transfers onto the plate, the wet paint might not actually lift it. We shall see. Nothing ventured. So let's see if I can find some other odds and ends. January the 19th, 1978. Okay, anything else? Okay, so I'm now going to try and roll on some colour. And I've not worked like this before, working off of a stencil. I've seen other people do it with those, like pre-cut stencils you can buy from the craft stores and that, and they seem to make it work. So I've got some colour, I've got a couple of metallics. Like if you've seen this Honesty plant, let's swing it under the camera, it is quite metallic. So I'm not, normally one for using metallics, but I'm going to give it a go all the same. So here's my theory. If I get my silver and a little bit of this pewter, just going to put a little bit of that on this plate that I've got set up next to the bigger one, and get my smaller roller and just see if I can just get a splash of colour. So what people that I've seen do is they kind of roll off. It's hard to tell if that's even going on, but I guess we'll find out. Let's put a bit of pewter in as well. And that's a slightly heavier body acrylic. This is an Amsterdam one, so yeah, that's definitely going on. So let's put a bit of that here and there. Okay, I don't think I'm really going to know how opaque any of that is until I kind of lift up. We'll do the print, we shall see. Let's try and mix this bit of silver into that pewter. So Winsor and Newton acrylic, that one. I've not printed with that before. So after these metallics, I've just gone in with the next colour I use is this. I love this colour. I think they call it like a Naples yellow green. It's an Amsterdam colour, but mixed with a little white. You can see the very light pink colour as well, just on the top left of the screen, and that gets mixed in. And all I'm trying to do is kind of patch in and get some sort of colour shift going through and a bit of variation, so it's not all kind of one kind of flat colour. So trying to catch edges and running off part of my stencil, so half of the seed head gets a bit of colour. You get the idea. Okay, a fun bit now where you get to pull the stencil and see how crisply you've managed to sort of achieve those shapes. And I'm liking, there's enough colour variation, a bit of texture as well, that should hopefully translate into an interesting kind of outcome. Right, pulling the whole image itself was fairly straightforward. Covered it with a nice, generous layer of white. Paper went down on top, and I left it for a good 15 or 20 minutes. You can see me burnishing with a Baron there, which I've just got hold of, so useful when you're working on a bigger scale with these gel plates. I left it for a good 20 minutes to make sure it was dry, and then I flipped it over I just find it easier pulling the plate off of the paper rather than the other way around, because sometimes the paper kind of really curls and gets a bit stressed, and I didn't want to disturb any of those kind of fragile, you can see with my finger there, some quite fragile parts where the paint peeled a bit, which I quite liked for this because of the texture of the seed heads is quite fragile and cracked in places. And yeah, I was pleased with that. Got the kind of subtle colour shift going through the different seed heads. I like the text. I love text. If I can ever get it involved in my art, I always try to. So I was really encouraged by that little experiment, but I was not quite satisfied because I wasn't using the full surface area of the gel plate, and because we're nearer kind of A2, if we're to use the full 16 by 20 inch, I had to kind of redraw and rather than use a photocopy for this one. So all you see me doing now is sketching out onto sugar construction paper my drawing again, and then going in with my oil pastel, obviously, which is going to give me my transfer. I mean, I adore drawing, so this was no problem for me. It was a really enjoyable challenge, and I actually think redrawing it, really trying to be even looser, might really add something else to this experiment. Now, the stencils here weren't quite straightforward. I guess I could have photocopied that drawing in sections, but I just traced off in small parts. So I'm breaking the stencil down into sort of 4 or 5 parts, which I thought would be easier to manage than one big sheet on this scale anyway. So let's see how the drawing transferred. Okay, so I've got my drawing ready to transfer. I've got my little silhouette stencils, which should help me add some colour and texture in a more precise way. So it's on with the transfer. Now this is quite, inking up with black Amsterdam acrylic here, the full kind of surface area of my big 16 by 20 gel plate is quite a challenge, because you're kind of racing against time. You want to get that whole surface area covered evenly and thinly, but you want to do it quite quick because you don't want that paint to dry too much. So anyway, as quick as I could, now flip it over my drawing transfer and just sort of lightly fingertip pressure, making sure the surface of that paper has made contact with the gel plate. Obviously you don't want to press too hard because you're still wanting your oil pastel to do its magic and resist that acrylic, thus kind of leaving your drawing on, or a transfer of your drawing on the surface of the plate. All I'm doing at the bottom of the frame there is just kind of masking off a little bit of that kind of excess that I didn't want. And you can see when I pull this up, the construction paper does lift that acrylic nicely. What you do get though is a kind of very dusty, faint grain or texture left on the surface, and that's just because of the absorbency and texture of the paper itself. Now you can kind of lean into that and go with it and enjoy it. I quite like it. If you don't want a kind of dusty texture, then maybe consider using a different type of paper, like a drawing or cartridge paper. You can always go back in, as I'm doing here, with some tape or a little baby wipe, some baby lotion, just to clean up any areas you want a bit kind of neater or cleaner. So anyway, dropping in my stencils here, and as soon as I try and position this, I'm realizing it was a good call to break these stencils up into smaller parts, because one whole sheet would have just been really hard to position, purely because the plate is so sticky. Having had being pleased with the kind of the texture and colours and the text that I used in the first little experiment, I just went in with the same again, so I don't need to do loads of commentary on this. The processing order was very similar. Text went down, then once I'd done that, again just rolling off the edges of those stencils and trying to vary the colour palette, trying to sort of get a blend or a change across each individual seed head as well. Felt a little bit more confident, obviously, this time, having had some experience with the first one. But yeah, I like running off these little stencils, and I can already see loads of applications for it in different kind of a different type of image, the different type of line image that you were working into. Okay, I'm just scanning the camera over the surface here of the plate, ready to kind of add my last layer on, a wet layer to pull the whole image. And you can see the variety, opaque in some parts, a bit more transparent in others, a little metallic here and there. And you can see where those stencils have kept those shapes quite nicely inside my line work. Now, I totally forgot to film adding my layer of white acrylic, so all you're getting is me having inked up, put my paper on, burnished it, left it for 20 minutes, half an hour, and this was really heavy paper I'm using, so it was fine to just peel up rather than flip over as I did with the last one and peel the plate from the paper. But again, really pleased with all the colour variation. If I zoom in now, look, you can see the kind of quality of line. I like, as I said before, that dusty sort of texture you get in the negative space, that kind of sugar construction paper, that kind of really naturally just leaves as a transfer. And yeah, dead pleased with that. Yeah, I reckon framed up could be really impactful, you know, nice big scale piece to go on the wall. Right, you know, your drawing transfer with a little top up, as I'm doing here, just redefining some of the lines of oil pastel will be good for many more transfers. So here I am inking up again, you know, same as before, working as fast as I can not to let that paint dry too much. Having topped up the oil pastel in parts, again, drawing goes down, not hanging around, peel it up, and you should get a fair few further prints out of that kind of initial investment. Once you're done with your drawing transfer, the actual picture itself, which you can see I've got down on my desk there, and all I'm doing here is using the stencils I made previously. I'm using those to paint directly onto my transfer drawing. You know, obviously I've got a few layers of black acrylic built up, which has kind of primed the surface a little bit, which means then you can have some fun. You know, you don't want to waste anything. So, you know, I thought, oh, well, I'll have a little go with it. You know, I might be able to get something decent out of the actual original drawing itself. So I'm just patching in some colour, using those stencils, using the roller, and just experimenting really, with the intention of painting and drawing back in with some oil pastels and some paint. Maybe try my little Caran d'Ache Neo Colour pastel pencil things as well. So yeah, just having fun, redefining parts of the drawing, dropping some colour into the background. You know, anything you can get out of this part is a bonus, right? Okay, there you go. If you enjoyed the video, drop it a like. Please comment below. I love the comments. Any questions, suggestions, etc. Consider supporting the channel by subscribing. That helps it grow and reach more people. And I will see you soon for another video. Ta-ta.